Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We'll get started in just a few minutes, but if you are here for the PNC webinar, you are in the right place. All right, well, we will give everyone one more minute to join, but I do see that we have participants here, so I want to go ahead and get started promptly. Thank you all so much for joining. My name is Amy Ahern, and this is the Pathstream webinar on designing your career at PNC. I lead our career services team and also strategy at Pathstream, and I'm joined by my colleague Caroline today, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. So glad that you're here today. My name's Caroline Young. I'm head of community and marketing at Pathstream. I'm really excited to have you all here and hope we'll have a great discussion today.
Thanks, Caroline. So if you are just joining us, welcome. This is the PNC webinar on designing your career at PNC. And we would love it if this is kind of an active and interactive conversation and session today. So you can go ahead and share in the chat, if you're willing, what is your job title at PNC and where are you located in the US? Just because we would love to see where everyone is coming from, what you're currently doing, and go from there. So feel free to type that right into the chat.
And if you want to, in the chat, you can select hosts and panelists or everyone. And if you want to select everyone so that everyone can see your answer, that'd be great.
Great. So I see we have Amy joining from Kalamazoo. Great to have you here. But Teller in Texas, which is great. Welcome. Amanda is customer care agent, also in Texas. Thank you all for adding your job title and your location, project manager in Pittsburgh. Excellent. So a really great variety of locations, jobs at PNC. Hopefully it's fun for you all to just see where everyone else is coming from as well. Process improvement consultant also in Pittsburgh. Great. Well, welcome to all of you. Amanda, Santo, Jennifer, Mohammed, financial advisor in Virginia. Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining. And then if you also want to share in the chat why you were motivated to enroll in this program, and then what you hope to learn from today's session, we can just tailor this presentation accordingly because we want to make it as relevant as possible to all of you. Welcome Rashid from Houston, Texas on help desk. If you're just joining us, feel free to go ahead and share your job title, your location in the chat. And then if you want to share a little bit about why you are motivated to enroll and why you're here today, that would be great, just so we could tailor this presentation accordingly. So Jennifer is here to open up additional future career options, which is excellent. That's very relevant to what we'll be talking about today. Amy's here to gain the formal title and certification to add to my resume and get additional information for future opportunities. Excellent. These are all great goals and motivations. I'll give everyone else just a minute or two more if you want to finish typing. And we'll go ahead and keep going. But please feel free to continue to share in the chat. I am seeing a few more, so that's great. People looking to gain a certification, to learning new skill sets to add to their resume. These are all really helpful motivations. And you can feel free to continue to use the chat to add questions, comments, ideas. We do want to make sure this is interactive and helpful for all of you. So just to get started, this is what you can expect from today's session. We are going to first go over an introduction to designing your career at PNC and what exactly we mean by that. Then we will do a few hands-on exercises to give you some tangible ideas of how you can start to think about your future career path. Think about your work preferences, your potential transferable skills, and how those might align to internal career pathways at PNC. We will also preview for you the career support that you can access as part of your Pathstream program. If you don't already know, we offer individualized coaching, resume support, help with updating your LinkedIn profile, help with identifying the right new internal opportunities, and help with interview prep. So we'll give you some more information on what exactly those services are and how you can access them. And then finally, we'll make sure to save some time at the end for any questions that you have that come up as we go through. So feel free to continue adding those in the chat as we go, and then we'll also have time at the end. The goal of today's session is to make sure that you are equipped with tools and mindsets rooted in something called design thinking to design a fulfilling, meaningful career at PNC, and also to think a little bit bigger about future opportunities that might be available to you. So you should walk away from today's session thinking bigger about what those career possibilities might be, hopefully being able to articulate some of your work preferences and understand how you can find career opportunities that actually energize you, identify some of the transferable skills that you already have that might be relevant to new roles. And we work with lots of students to do this. And often we find that people might be surprised about some of the things they already know that could be super relevant to new opportunities. And get ready to take advantage of Pathstream's career services and resources to begin the next chapter of your career. Now, I do want to add this disclaimer, which is that Caroline and I are not experts on PNC specifically. All of you are. You work within this company. You have a great sense of some of the job families, the job opportunities, what your colleagues are doing. But what we can offer is perspectives from hundreds of other employees that we've worked with across many different companies, including other banks and financial institutions, on some of the exciting new career paths that we are seeing emerge at these types of companies. And so we can help with an outside perspective on challenging some of your assumptions about what might be possible, and to give you some of the industry perspective from multiple companies and multiple employers that we've worked with about how you can start to think creatively about career opportunities and career advancement. So just to frame all of this up, and then we'll start to dig into some of the exercises. We are talking about designing your career at PNC because obviously you're all here because you're enrolled in a Pathstream certificate program that PNC is funding because they are invested in your career growth and education. So you're in a great place. And we also know that in the context of banking specifically, work is changing. So there's new types of jobs that are arising, many of which require digital skills and technology skills. So if you have some of these new capabilities, you become really competitive and attractive, not only for performing better in your current job, but also you can become a very competitive applicant for other internal possibilities in these new and emerging roles. And that is because many of the tools and technologies that are required to do our work in today's economy are constantly evolving and emerging. And you all probably know better than I do, given where you all sit, that the banking sector in particular is undergoing a lot of digital transformation. And so people that can combine this ability to be client-facing, who know the industry really well, and you also have these new digital abilities in things like IT, agile project management, data analytics, all of the skills that you are starting to learn will really be the people that can take the industry, the company, and the sector forward. And we're in a really interesting moment right now, as all of you know, because a lot of roles at banks didn't even exist 20 years ago, right? So things like social media managers, app designers, UX designers, data scientists, SEO specialists, cloud computing specialists, all of these things might sound familiar to us today, but it's good to keep in mind that like when many of us were going to school, you couldn't even be trained on some of these things yet. So if you can gain some of these capabilities and keep up with the latest technology, you will have the opportunity to compete and be a viable candidate for many of these exciting new creative opportunities and fields. The other thing we often like to remind people that we work with is that career paths no longer have to be linear. So if you work at a bank branch, for example, you might be accustomed to seeing the people above you every day are the branch manager and maybe people in other levels of banking, and think about that as your logical career ladder and where you can move up. Or if you work in project management, you might think of it in the typical hierarchy where you're project manager 1, and then you become level 2, and then maybe you manage the team. But I think one thing that's really helpful to think about is that you can also consider career paths that are lateral moves. And so that might mean thinking about the skills you might have gained as a customer service rep or a customer service agent, and thinking about, oh, that might actually apply to a sales operations role or a project management role, or these opportunities that are not just directly up the line of where you can see, but also into other business lines, other business units, other teams, other groups within the company. That can often unlock even more opportunities for advancement. So one thing we're just continuously challenging people on is to consider what are the transferable skills you have that could set you up for other creative career paths as well. So that's what we'll start to talk about today. And so to bring a framework and approach to all of this, we are going to use a process called design thinking. And some of you might be familiar with this. It's essentially an approach to innovation that came out of Silicon Valley. It's been used by product innovators and designers to build and create and test new things like the computer mouse and other types of new inventions and products and business models. But it can also be applied to our own careers and be used to do things like listen to ourselves, understand our preferences, define what we want, brainstorm ways to achieve those results, start to test things out in lightweight ways, and then keep iterating and adapting our approach. So in the same way, you could think about a product designer really understanding the needs of their target customers, brainstorming ideas and solutions, prototyping something, testing that out, and then validating that there is a need for it before they bring it to market. You can take that same kind of experimental mentality and apply it to your own career and really think deeply about, what do I want out of all of this? How do I define what I want? How do I start to brainstorm different versions of what that could look like? Then how do I actually start to prototype something or build like a lightweight test to see if this is the career path that I actually want to pursue? And then kind of commit to trying it out. So it's a framework that you can use to think about not just imagining that your career path either has to go A or B, and you have to make these very stark choices, but to instead realize that this can be a constant iteration and reinvention of what you think is possible. So if all that sounds a little vague, that's okay. We're going to get more into how you start to do that. But the thing to know is that design thinking is particularly useful for solving what people call wicked problems, which are questions that really have no single right answer. And so those are things like, what should I do with my career? There's not one definitive solution. And so if you can use a framework to start to test your way into options, that can be very helpful. They're also helpful. This approach is also helpful for questions like, how does my passion connect to my job? Should I look for a new role? How do I find a career that's financially stable? How do I balance my career and family? Right? These are like the really big, tough questions that students often come to us in career services and are needing help grappling with. And again, there's no one person that can tell you definitively, this is the only path that will work for you. They are really open-ended questions that you have to be willing to explore. But if you can start to think about them in very thoughtful ways and test things out, you can often unlock really amazing opportunities for yourself. So to make this all a little bit more tangible, let's look at two different examples. One is Juanita. She's a technical support manager. She's realized she enjoys working behind the scenes to troubleshoot tech problems more than she actually enjoys interacting with customers, responding to help desk tickets, and being that kind of front line of service. So she is just feeling very stuck in her career. And her career problem is, how do I find a role where I will find the work energizing? So again, it's a big, tough, open-ended question. No one can really tell her definitively. And so this is the type of career problem that it might make sense to apply a design thinking framework to. Similarly, we have Derek, who's a universal banker. He consistently meets his sales targets. He loves working for the company, but doesn't want to stay at a branch for the rest of his career. And so he's thinking about, how do I transfer my skills to a corporate role? And so again, it's like a big open-ended question, and he's trying to find some way to start to tackle it. So I'll pause here for a minute and see if anyone is brave enough to want to share in the chat, what is a career problem that is top of mind for you, or a just open-ended question that you want to solve in your career right now? It could be related to your current job. It could be thinking about what you want to do next. But if you want to just take a moment and think about, if you had to distill one of the top questions that you have about your own career path, what would that be right now? Now, have Caroline maybe share some of the responses as they come in.
Yeah. So Jennifer says, what do I want to be when I grow up? I'm already mid-career, by the way. I think we all can relate to that to some degree. I have a lot of prior experience in different industries, but have not been able to move very far in banking. I'm newer to a business analyst role, and I'm still learning my way around the role. Plus, I'm trying to determine if this is the next long-term role that I want to pursue. So very good examples of what Amy's talking about.
Yes, these are excellent examples. Thank you all for sharing. And this is pretty typical, honestly. You shouldn't feel alone with having some of these questions. I worked with Pathstream's career coaching team for the last 3 years, and literally we've seen hundreds of people also asking this question of like, what exactly do I want to be when I grow up, even if I might be 40, 50, or like many years into my career. And then also trying to make career switches, right? So if you've worked a lot in another industry and you're interested in breaking into a new type of role, how exactly do you package all of that transferable skills and experience that you have to essentially get credit and make sure that that past experience is recognized and valued by a next employer? So these are all really good questions that we see many people grappling with. So now we're going to move into exercises to help give you some tangible ways to start to reflect on and think about these challenges. And so the first one will be essentially a work preferences inventory. And then the second will be one we call a skills puzzle. So the one thing before we jump into this, I do want to just remind everyone is that maybe as you start to think about designing a future career path, you might be having some of these thoughts like, I'm too old to make a big career change. I don't have the right education or degrees for most of these types of roles, and so I'm stuck. I don't even know what some of these new job titles are. Like when I flashed all of those new roles in banking on the screen and you saw something like SEO specialist, you're like, what exactly is that? I just have no idea. Or people like me, for whatever reason, really can't get these jobs because I'm in customer service, because I don't have a college degree, any of these factors. And I just want to explicitly call out that we see these kinds of doubts with almost everyone. So if you're not experiencing them, congratulations, you're definitely doing something right and you have that kind of confidence. But if you are having any of these questions or doubts, just rest assured that almost regardless of people's prior qualification levels and past experience, whenever you're thinking about a new big career move, it's pretty common to just think about like, I'm not quite sure if this is possible. And that's because many of these things are stretch opportunities and are growth edges. And so it's natural to feel like I might not have everything I need to get to that next step. But I would just reassure you that we've worked with many, many people to help them design these kinds of career paths. So that includes people that are older, that are immigrants, that might not speak English as a first language, people that might not have prior experience in tech, people that work in customer service roles, even people that are already software engineers, but looking for their next thing, or people that are vice presidents, product managers. We really see people with tons of different job titles all grappling with similar questions. So if you have any doubts, I just want to assure you, consider this your pep talk. We can help work you through some of these kind of frameworks, tools, and coaching sessions to feel equipped to take on this next step, whether it's in your current role or figuring out your next chapter. And why should you even consider what might be these possibilities? Well, the rewards can be huge if you start to think a little bit bigger and more creatively about your career. So you can achieve better work-life balance, a job that fits your working preferences and actually gives you energy instead of draining you all day long, more stimulating work, higher paying salary, and essentially just the next chapter of your life. So even though it can sometimes feel a little risky and a little bit exhausting to go through a job search process to try to identify what you want to do next, we would just encourage you to kind of think bigger and suspend your doubts. But without further ado, we want to get into a little bit of a reflection exercise that we have found helpful to just get people thinking about, what are my work preferences? As you all know, you've done many different kinds of jobs. Some are going to require different orientations, whether that's being more behind the scenes or being more people facing, whether that's switching between many tasks or staying focused on one. And it can just be helpful every now and again to pause in your career, kind of take an audit of which types of work you prefer doing, and then think about how those preferences could map to other roles and other opportunities. So what I would ask you to do if you're sitting in a computer or even on your phone, but pull out a piece of paper or just open up a Word doc, a Google Doc, a note on your computer, and just number it 1 through 8 like this. And again, this can be on a piece of paper or written on your computer, but just pull that out. And then we will start to go through a series of prompts. So I'll give everyone just a minute to get that set up. And once you have that ready, this is what we're going to be doing. So we're going to flash a question on the screen. It'll basically be saying, do you prefer X or do you prefer Y? Of course, you might have both tendencies, but just gravitate and write down the one that you relate to the most. You don't need to overthink it, just write down your preference. And then based on those results, we'll show you some of the career pathways that we have seen other people in financial services and banking companies gravitate to based on their kinds of work preferences. So we'll go through these kind of 8 prompts, write them down so you have notes, and then that will become what you can use to think about what future types of roles and opportunities might be energizing to you. So here's the first one. Take a minute and think. Do you prefer interacting with customers or working behind the scenes? We'll move on to the next one. Do you prefer forming relationships with colleagues and customers or accomplishing tasks? And obviously it's not exactly an either or, but just which one do you identify most strongly with? Which of these comes most naturally to you? Communicating using numbers or communicating using words and images? Right, a few more. Which of these would you say you'd prefer? Fast-paced work or methodical work? Next one, do you identify as someone who focuses on the details or someone who focuses on the bigger picture? if you have to make decisions, are you more likely to trust your gut and intuition or use numbers and a logical approach? Okay, we have two more. What is your long-term career goal? To manage others or to work individually? And then the last one, what do you prefer? Working on many things or working on, that should say, one thing? Okay. So I know that was pretty quick, but in the ideal world, we'll share these slides. And if it's helpful, you can go back and reflect a little bit more on these different dimensions of work to truly start to think about, okay, in my current job, which of these do I already fulfill in terms of the kinds of work preferences that I have? And if I think about the kind of role that I want next, how might I find something that better aligns with the kinds of work that I am most energized by and feel most engaged doing? And this list of preferences, we've come up with them because we've really seen that these are some of the major factors when we work with many different types of employees and learners. We've come up with this list of 8 because we've seen that these are some of the factors that most predict long-term career fulfillment and the likelihood that someone will not only get a new job, but actually stick with it and really enjoy that work in the long term. So having this list of preferences can start to serve as like a compass to assess how well future jobs might fit with where you want to go in the long run. So most importantly, it can just be helpful to have this as a reflection exercise as you think about new opportunities. But we're also going to show you some of the specific categories of roles that we help to prepare people for that might be aligned to the certificate programs that you are taking, to show you how work preferences start to map to some of those career paths, just so you can get a sense of, okay, if I have these kinds of tendencies and preferences, these are the types of job titles that I might start to look for at PNC or in future chapters of my career that would align with these preferences. And again, if you don't see the kinds of roles that you are thinking about exploring, I would just recommend that you do take advantage of Pathstream's career coaching, because one of the big things that a coach can help you do is take all of those work preferences you've identified and help you point to specific job titles that you might not have thought about yet that might really align with what you like doing. But just to give you a sense, one of the big types of jobs that we prepare people for at Pathstream, and that some of you might be enrolled in this program, is related to data analytics. And eventually some people also go on to become data scientists. And we see that if you have these types of work preferences, that often sets you up for success and long-term fulfillment in a data analyst role. So you like working behind the scenes, accomplishing tasks, communicating using numbers, doing really methodical work that focuses on details, using numbers and logic, focusing mostly on one thing at a time, and mostly doing individual work. Obviously, I'm painting this with a bit of a broad brush, and we definitely see data analysts with other types of characteristics, but just to give you a sense of, if you identify with any of these, this might be a kind of career path that you could explore. Digital marketing is another big area that is fast growing and that we do see a lot of people get excited about. And we see that people who like working behind the scenes, again, accomplishing tasks, communicating using words and images to create things like advertising and graphics and campaigns, often gravitate to this work. They like fast-paced work. They focus on the details. They use numbers and logic to analyze the results of marketing campaigns. They like working on many things, and they can either be a manager or an individual contributor often in these marketing roles. But if you're identifying with any of these characteristics and you haven't yet even thought about a marketing career, this might be something worth putting on your radar as well. We'll just go through a few more of these just to give you a sense. Sales operations. So these are the roles that are kind of behind the scenes, but supporting a sales team to really use technology to analyze the deal flow, to track business development engagements, to monitor a sales pipeline. And so people in this field often like working behind the scenes. They do like being collaborative with colleagues, even if they don't want to be the ones necessarily doing the sales. They like to communicate using numbers and are analytical, focus on the details, like often working on one thing. And mostly these are individual roles. So if you identify with any of these characteristics, it might be intriguing to look at a sales ops career path. And then just two more. Project or program management is another really big area that sometimes people don't think about as being in tech, but these are the people that are often coordinating work to bring new technology solutions to market. So these are people who like being super organized, working behind the scenes, interacting with a lot of different teams and stakeholders to make complex projects happen. They communicate using words and give a lot of regular updates. They are very detail oriented, but they also kind of have to keep in mind the bigger picture. So people that identify with both of those work preferences are often very good project and program managers. They like working on many things and they really have to shift to just keep everything on track. And then often these people are not necessarily people managers themselves, but are indirectly influencing lots of different people and teams. And then the last one, because I know that some of you are enrolled in the Google IT cert, if you are thinking about a career in IT, these are often people who have work preferences about that like working behind the scenes, forming relationships, communicating using words, because you do have to often have to write tickets and diagnose things. You're detail oriented, you're logical, you prefer working on a lot of different things because you're troubleshooting a lot, and you're often an individual contributor. So obviously this is painting in broad brushstrokes, but this should hopefully just give you some idea of the preferences that you reflected on, how they might start to map to big categories of emerging jobs that banks like PNC are often hiring for in high numbers. And so just to give you this case study again, Juanita was the technical support manager who was feeling kind of stuck because she liked troubleshooting tech problems more than she enjoyed interacting with customers. So when we think about those different career paths we just outlined, data analytics or IT might be ones where she could find that kind of behind the scenes career with less external facing work. So that's just an example of how you might take your challenging career problem, think about it through the lens of what type of work you prefer, and then map it to some of these internal career pathways. Okay, this one, we're just going to preview for you how you can start to identify your transferable skills. I'm not going to have you do this exercise live in this workshop, but it can be something that you can consider doing later and then also do with your career coach if you're interested. But first, we just want you to, in the spirit of thinking big, share in the chat if you could move to any other role within PNC right now that you know of. And again, if you have to think really creatively and just imagine that you have all the skills and qualifications and that's not the main barrier, what do you think that ideal career destination would be? So you can either say it's the role you're currently in if you're super happy in that, or imagine what other career you might want to pursue, and just take a minute and put that in the chat. Nice.
Amy's saying current role or project management. Trying to remember what Amy said. You're in business analyst now. Okay, cool. Andrea says field support specialist or project management. Great.
More project management interest. I love it. Everyone else can keep reflecting, but we would welcome any others in the chat. Amanda.
Yeah, being able to work with help desk. Yeah, nice. System administrator or networking.
Great. So they're all super helpful.
Data analyst, great.
Awesome. So sometimes this can just be a fun exercise to think about. If you didn't have to do the job you had today and you look around the company, what is another thing that you're at least intrigued by, if not already committed to someday wanting to move into that type of role? And sometimes it's intimidating to just think about, okay, how would I even start to chart that path from where I currently sit to this new type of career opportunity that I want to pursue? And so that's what we want to give you some skills to help do. So one thing that basically we encourage people to do is either use your internal career site, or you can also, look on the public job boards that PNC hosts and actually find the job description for any of these roles that you are really excited and intrigued by. Because as we all know, that is essentially the list of like qualifications and experiences and the concrete description of what the hiring team thinks is required in order to be capable for these roles. And what you can do is actually kind of use that as a roadmap of the skills you already have and then the skills you need to gain in order to become a qualified applicant. So really treat that job description as a living document. And I actually encourage people I work with in career coaching to like go find a few different examples of dream job descriptions, keep them on file, and then use them as a map to see what skills do I currently have, where do I need to gain. As I take new courses, I can be kind of checking those off the list and using it as a rubric or a checklist to start to get pointed in the direction of your next career. And so one thing we first recommend that you do is really think about, okay, of all of those lists of skills and required credentials, literally, I like to have people copy and paste that job description, put it in a new document, and take out a highlighter. Either you've printed it out or using the computer, and think about which of these past, from past roles or experiences, which skills would be relevant to this new role. And we often find that people at first will look at a job description for a new thing and say, I don't really know how to do almost any of this. But we often find that people are underestimating the relevant experience that they might have. And so some of the hidden sources of your skills might be the technology platforms that you use. So for example, if you are a bank teller or a help desk admin, you might be using a software like Salesforce. You might not even recognize that that's the software you use on a day-to-day basis, but there's going to be other jobs that might even pay more in fields like Salesforce administrators or sales operations specialists or a database administrator that are also going to require knowledge of Salesforce. So it's thinking about what are the technology platforms, tools, systems that I log into every day that I might not know the name of, but then I'm actually a very proficient user of, and how could I connect those to the required tools and platforms that are needed for these other roles. Another thing to keep in mind is if you're an internal employee, you might not recognize it, but you might have tons of existing knowledge about the customer base or the client base that you serve. And that is just kind of acquired on the job, but it's going to make you a much differentiated candidate compared to someone coming in from the outside, that you already know what the company cares about, the types of customers they serve, and all of that kind of context. So think about that and how you can package that on your resume when you're applying for a new role. You might also just know processes and systems and the way that a company does something. And you might have been there, for 20 years and really know the ins and outs of how things get done. And you could apply that type of internal knowledge to a new role. And then you also might just have gained some of this by watching other people that are in similar roles do their job. And so, of course, you would probably need some additional training to get up to their level, but I just wouldn't underestimate the kind of context that you've gained just by observing the workforce, being in these tools and systems, using these processes. And so one of the things our career coaches can do is to help you package all of that on your resume in a way that's going to be really compelling so that they can see that you have a lot of the required skills just from your past work experience. The other thing that you can keep in mind is you might have had past roles or past education that would have more transferable skills than you realize. So we often encourage people to look at related courses you took. This could have been back in college if you took anything related to data, if you want to be a data analyst or computer science or any of those types of roles. It could also be any online courses you took. I know that a lot of people that sign up for Pathstream programs have also taken online courses on the side. So think about any relevant skills you've gained from those. You might have done side projects. You might have done volunteer work, even for your kids' school or anything related to the community that might have given you relevant things. If you think about something like project management, we often see that people are using that in a lot of volunteer work. Hobbies, freelance projects you've pursued, software you've used in past jobs, roles that required similar people skills or similar types of problem solving skills. So I would just expand your aperture on what you consider relevant skills from your past education and work history, and think about how any of that can translate into a new opportunity. And again, if this all sounds intimidating, that's exactly what our career coaches are here to help you kind of figure out and document. I will also point out there's 2 tools that I really love to use with people, and people just kind of find interesting and fun to start exploring. So one is this resume extraction tool, which you can basically, if you have any version of your resume, copy and paste the text into this tool. And what it will do is just like in a matter of minutes to seconds, pull out a list of all of the skills keywords that based on your resume, it thinks you likely have. And I would say that about 90% of them will be relevant. Of course, this is all like machine learning and AI. So some of the results are a little bit funky and you definitely want to validate it. But what it can give is a really helpful starting point for people of, okay, based on everything I've described on my resume that I've done, what are the skills I actually have? And then how can I use those to identify what might be transferable to new roles? So that's something interesting to check out. The other one is called Job Scan. And so basically this is a cool way where you can paste the text of your resume into one box, and then you can paste the job description of the role you want to get into the other box. And it will give you like a score that says, okay, you have X percentage of the qualifications needed for this role. Again, I would treat this a little bit with a grain of salt because it's, again, just using data and machine learning to make this prediction, but it's kind of a helpful starting point to just say, okay, how qualified would an applicant tracking system like they might use at your company, how would it score you to see how much relevant experience you have for this new opportunity? Then again, you can take those results and work with a career coach, because often we can help rewrite your resume in a way that would make it seem like you have even more relevant transferable experience. So final thing we'll just ask you to share in the chat is, if you think about those dream roles that you all listed, what's your estimate today if you had to say what the percentage of skills and qualifications you think you have for that role? And again, that can be anywhere from like 1% to 100. There's no wrong answer. But if you just kind of had to estimate today, how close are you to getting that next opportunity you want? Take a minute and just write that in the chat. Nice.
That's a good range, sort of 5 to 90 to like in the middle, 50%.
That's great. Yes. So we see that for some people, it's really going to be a stretch and you have to gain like a lot of new skills and experiences, maybe project work to get there. And for other people, you're nearly there. And so maybe taking a certification course and then working with a career coach to update your resume could really help you get there. So one thing you can start to think about is, what do you think you could do to fill some of these gaps in skills and experiences? And so those could be things like you're already doing, which is taking courses, taking certificate programs. We definitely see that that can be helpful, especially if they're project-based courses where you're really doing some of the same types of tasks and assignments that you'd have to do on the job, because then you can actually feature those as real examples when you're in interviews, when you're putting together your resume, and they can be really credible evidence for an employer that you're ready to do this next opportunity. Obviously, you can also do things like start to find a mentor or someone that's already in this role and ask them for an informational interview just to learn more about, how did you get into this field? What is a day in the life actually like? What do you recommend that I would take or pursue as new courses or new conference opportunities or other things to get ready for this kind of opportunity? And you can also just ask to job shadow for a day, ask for any side projects that they're working on. If you just want to get a sense of like, what would I actually be doing on a day-to-day basis and how do I get to know this other team? So these are all some just strategies we've seen for people to start to use that design thinking approach to kind of prototype like what this next step would look like. Even if you're not ready to formally apply yet, it can just be really helpful to get a sense for the kinds of projects and the work you'd be doing on a day-to-day basis before you're even ready to fully commit. So you can kind of validate that, yes, this matches with my skills, this matches with my work preferences, this would be a good next move for me. So I won't make you do this in the chat or anything formal, but it can just be helpful to reflect a little bit on what are some of the action steps I could take today, this month, this year to address some of those skills gaps to get you from either 5 to 90% or 90% to 100% of feeling like you're really ready for this next opportunity. So I've been alluding to this throughout, but just to close out, I wanted to give you a sense of the career support that is available through Pathstream. So like I mentioned, we offer one-on-one career coaching calls, and that can be really even if you're at the starting point of trying to figure out, okay, I've done some reflection on my work preferences, I've done these projects and these courses, and I'm really trying to figure out what are the specific opportunities that I would be realistically qualified for at PNC as a next step. A coach can work with you to help hone in on some of those job titles. Then they can also help you rewrite, refresh your resume to align to those new opportunities. And so that's doing some of those things I talked about, which is like identifying transferable skills, relevant work experience, all of those things, and repackaging your resume to make it very aligned to the new types of opportunities you want to pursue. We also have a coach that specializes in LinkedIn reviews. And I know that most of you will be applying for internal jobs, but it can always be helpful just to keep your LinkedIn profile updated as well and feature your new skills and projects and certifications. So that's something we always encourage. And then if you do start to get interviews for these internal opportunities, we have mock interviews that can help you get ready for things like trial tasks or technical projects or any assessments that you'd have to do. And so that's just another thing to be aware of, that if you want to use these resources, they are all available to you for free since you are enrolled in a Pathstream certificate program. If you're wondering how exactly do I opt into all of this, there will be a survey in your courses to sign up for career services. And like I mentioned, it's totally free. And one thing to keep in mind is that people put a lot of time and effort into all of these courses that they take, but they often tell us that career services is one of the most valuable parts of the program because it really helps them connect the dots between what they learned and then how they can actually use those new skills to advance their career. So just encourage you to look for that survey. So just to conclude, and then we'll make sure to take some questions, some of the things we hope you're walking away with today are to just remember that new types of jobs are emerging in the banking sector every day, and they will continue to as technology evolves. These jobs require people who are lifelong learners because these fields are just moving too quickly for you to have studied this all in school or done this before. And so you're already in a really good position. Everyone that showed up today obviously not only cares about taking new courses, but is also showing up for supplemental webinars, which just shows me that you are like some of the best of the best out there. You likely have more transferable skills than you think you do. We see this time and again when we work with employees and learners, is that people just underestimate how relevant their past work history can be to new opportunities. You should also, though, think about your work preferences to find a long-term career fit, because you want to find something that's going to really energize and engage you on a day-to-day basis. And so if you think of those 8 dimensions that we went through, that can really be a good compass as you move forward. We also just encourage people to take the leap and explore, because taking on these new challenges, pushing yourself to just get into a new field can lead to better work-life balance, higher salaries, more fulfillment. So yeah, it can feel kind of risky when you're doing it, but people hardly ever regret just thinking a little bit bigger about their career and what they could do next. And you don't have to do it alone. Like I mentioned many, many times now, we do have career coaches available to help with you. And we do work with people from really all prior education backgrounds, roles, experience levels, and ages. So it's really never too late to kind of start on this work. I'd also just encourage you to think about how you can use this design thinking approach to think about the next chapter of your career and just use it to start reflecting, defining what you want, brainstorming ways you could make that happen, testing it out by doing things like job shadowing, taking on a side project, talking to someone that already has the role to explore if it's a good fit, and then you can start applying. I also recommend there's this site called Designing Your Life, which is the website is designingyour.life. They are having a new book come out called Designing Your New Work Life. But in general, they have just lots of resources and tools on how to apply this type of design thinking approach and framework to your career. And so that might be something useful just to check out. And with all of that said, I just want to thank you all for your engagement and participation. And we would love to take any final questions that you have. You can feel free to put them directly in the chat and Caroline will make sure to surface.
Yeah, feel free to leave them either in the chat or in the Q&A section. Either is fine. And just so everyone knows, we'll send out the video of this webinar to all of you and anyone who signed up. And you can feel free to follow up via email with any questions as well.
There's no dumb questions, so feel free to add anything here. We'll give everyone just a minute more to see if there's any lingering thoughts, ideas, questions. All right, if there's no questions, the last thing I would ask is to put one word in the chat to describe how you're feeling as you're walking away from today's session. And then with that, we will thank you all for coming and hope you enjoy the rest of your Pathstream certificate. Please reach out if there's anything we can do to help. But if you can just add one word to describe how you're feeling as you walk away. Love to see it, Amy. They're great.
These are great. Thank you all so much for coming and participating.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And as you continue through this certificate program, we always love to learn about how you're applying what you are learning to your career. So if you'd like to be featured in a success story, we always like to document the experiences of our students to use them for encouragement for other people, to share them with your workplace. So you can reach out to Lily, who's also on this call today, and she would love to do an interview and feature you. And then we also just love to encourage people, if you know of anyone else at PNC that would benefit from one of these certificate programs, we really do find that other PNC employees are best situated to identify people that would benefit. So if you have a colleague that you think would find any of the skills that you are learning useful, feel free. We can do an advisory call with them, or they can go directly through guilds. But remember, this is all free. So we hope that you'll come back and take more programs with us and refer colleagues. But we just really appreciate all of the attention and engagement that you all demonstrated today. And we look forward to staying in touch. So thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.